Hello chess lovers, I have an interesting game for you played by Hikaru Nakamura and 13-year-old Indian chess prodigy Nihal Sarin. The game was played on chess.com and this was a 3-minute game. Nakamura started with b3, Larsen's opening, d5, bishop b2, knight c6, e3, bishop f5, knight f3, e6, d4, knight f6, a3, a6, prophylaxis moves by both sides, bishop e7, knight c3, white castles, rook c1, knight e4, bishop d3, black captures on c3, rook takes c3, and now we also see the exchange of bishops, knight a5, c takes d5, e takes d5, white castles, and c6. And after c6, this knight on a5 looks very passive and seems like the knight is out of the game. Knight d2, b5, rook c2, bishop d6, rook a1, protecting the pawn and bringing the bishop to c3 square. Queen e7, a4, white is opening up the a file, using the fact that this knight on a5 is misplaced. But actually white had another option, for example, to play e4 and playing on the center. But instead we see a4, bishop b4, bishop c3, g6 and g3. Both sides are making luft for their kings. But actually capturing on b5 and then placing the rook on a2 is stronger. This knight is pinned and this pin can be very unpleasant for black. But instead Nakamura plays g3, h5, h4, preventing any possible counterplay on the king's side. Rook e8, black is controlling the e4 square, not allowing e4 by white, but Nakamura has already decided to play on the queen side. Rook a2, rook a7, and rook takes a5. Nakamura is getting two pieces against the rook, but actually playing bishop takes b4 and then knight f3 is stronger. If rook a8, then queen c2, king g7 for example, then knight e5, queen d6, queen c5, and this pin just paralyzes all black pieces. Black is in trouble. But instead we see rook takes a5 and we see this exchange on a5, queen a3, queen c3, rook a8, bishop b4, queen a1 check, queen takes a1, rook takes a1 check, king g2, f6, black is going to centralize his king, bishop c5, king f7, king f3, king e6, b4, placing the pawn on dark square where it can be protected by the bishop, rook d1, king e2, rook a1, knight b3, rook a2 check, king f3. Black has no definite strategy and black is just making waiting moves. Let's see, can Nakamura realize his advantage? King e6, knight c5 check, king f5, bishop e7, rook a1, knight b3, rook a2, knight a5, and a bad move by black, rook c2. A better move was king e6 and bringing the king to d7 square, protecting the pawn. But after rook c2, black is losing his pawn on c6. Now comes bishop c5, and after g5, Nakamura captures on c6. But actually Nakamura hurried. A better move was capturing on g5 and then playing g4 check, sacrificing a pawn in order to double up black pawns, and king g2. If king e4, then only then knight takes c6. King d3 for example, knight e5 check, and this continuation of course favors white. But instead after g5, Nakamura played knight takes c6, and here comes g4 check, and suddenly this pawn on g4 becomes very unpleasant for white king, controlling the f3 and h3 squares. King e4, knight e7, attacking the pawn and not allowing king d3. Black has a simple idea to bring the king to e1 square and put pressure on f2. Rook d2, knight g6, f5, a very important move, and overlooking black's next threat, Nakamura actually blundered. He played knight f4. Well, if we have a look at the position, actually Houdini is evaluating the position as winning for white, but on the other hand, from a human perspective, it's quite difficult to win in this position. There are a lot of technical problems. For example, if white moves his knight, then black can play king d3. If knight e6, then king e2, knight f4 check, king e1. If king g1, then rook c2. And there is always this threat of rook takes f2. You can't move away your knight. And it's not quite clear how is white going to win the game. But instead, after f5, Nakamura played knight f4, and you can pause the video and try to find black's next move. Ready? Nihal Sarin played rook takes f2 check. Look at this beautiful move. The idea is that if king takes f2, then black king has no legal moves, and this is a stalemate. Nakamura played king g1. He was playing for a win. Now the king penetrates, king f3, knight takes h5, rook c2, and a bad move by Nakamura, knight g7. Actually, this is losing. It was important to play bishop d6, controlling the f4 square, protecting the pawn. If, for example, king takes e3, then bishop f4 check. If king takes d4, then knight f6. Both sides have dangerous passed pawns, and the chances of players are equal. But instead, after rook c2, we see knight g7, which allows black to win the game, but Nihal Sarin missed his chance. He played rook c1 check, king h2, and started to repeat the moves. In this position, the winning move was f4. If e takes f4, then rook c2 check. If king g1, then king takes g3. The threat is rook c1 checkmate, and after knight f5 check, black can capture on f4, and this pawn is becoming very dangerous. White is in trouble. Let's go back. Instead, after king h2, black played rook c2 check, king g1, king takes g3, but already white is managing to cover the g3 square. King f3, and here comes the bishop d6. Rook c1 check, king h2, and black started to give a perpetual check, and the game ended in a draw. A very interesting game, I think, with a very dramatic finish. Your comments and questions, please. What do you think about this game?